So without further ado, I will introduce Mary. I see that she's getting ready to show us her grandchildren. And Dr. Mary McKenna is a professor at the Faculty of Kinesiology at the University of New Brunswick, Fredericton. Her involvement with school food at local, provincial, national, and international level is longstanding. Dr. McKenna's recent research includes a survey of provincial and territorial government funders of school food programs, a national survey of programs targeted to school children during the COVID-19 pandemic, and a review of school nutrition policies. Dr. McKenna is a member of the Coalition for Healthy School Food and the Canadian Association for Food Studies, and serves as the researcher in residence at New Brunswick's Food for All organization. Thank you, Dr. McKenna, and it's all yours.
All right, great, thank you. And I don't have all the data that you mentioned, Kim. I'm sorry that this is going to be the last year, but that app looks amazing. So that will be a great contribution. We did agree on the 5% for Alberta, so that's good because these data are tricky to get. So great pleasure to be here. I see people from the East Coast, and shout out to Leola Langell, who's from Gary's elementary school. If we get a chance to talk a little bit more after, and I'll try to go as quickly as I can. Leola's doing some fantastic work in New Brunswick, and see others who I know as well. So familiar and some unfamiliar names. Happy to see everybody. Wanda's done a great job too, getting us prepared for this. So thanks especially to Wanda and your group. As Wanda says, I haven't been out in schools for a long time. And so I always like to show photographs of schools. It's like, I have no updated photographs. So being a proud grandmother, these are 4 of my 5 grandchildren, and we'll see the rest, see the other one little girl at the end. You'll see too that I say presented by Mary McKenna. This was definitely a team effort, and I have my co-authors to thank at the end. And Amberly Ritz is on, who is a co-author, is on this webinar. So special welcome to Amberly as well. Again, photographs. This is a food box. It's a beautiful one, isn't it? But this was a food box when we pivoted to not being able to go to our farmers market. They were selling food in food boxes, and so I took a photograph. I arranged it. I hope you appreciate my artistic attempts here, and yeah, to show off the kind of food that we were getting in these food boxes that we were paying for. So what are we going to talk about? Well, we've done some research. Amberly and I presented research that Amberly and I worked on last year, and I'm going to also refer to it this year as a way to compare with a survey that we did during COVID to see how is it that people were pivoting. Also, there's some pretty exciting things happening. I see too, there's somebody here from the coalition at the federal level and politically. And just think a little bit at the end, what does all of this mean? So just as Kim set the scene with her data, a few caveats here on both of these. They are both self-reported, and they're both underreported. So we know that there are more programs here than in both instances than we were able to capture. You say, well, is this good enough? And it's as good as we can get. And we thought that it was best to have updated data that was incomplete rather than very outdated data that existed before. Lots has changed since the previous survey, which was in the 1990s. So with that said, we did a survey in 2018-2019 of provincial territorial funders of free provincial territorial programs. We had data from 16 programs. Alberta did not participate, but don't fear, you are going to have another chance. We did collect a little bit of data through websites on Alberta. I'm from New Brunswick. New Brunswick doesn't even have provincial funding for a school food program, so there were no data from New Brunswick. Then in 2020, as we all recall, the March of 2020, everything just kind of shut down for a while. And so remarkably, people pivoted, the word of the year, and recognized that students who were no longer going to school and had participated in school food program still needed to have food. And they cobbled together various programs that we will see. And so we wanted to capture that as best we could. We had 136 responses, and we sent it to schools, organizations, and community groups. We know that there were more than that. Nevertheless, we get some sense of what they were doing and how they were doing it. So we had good participation from Alberta. You're in the top 3. We had 37 from Ontario, 27 from BC. We also had 2 participants that were operating in more than one province and some nationally, I should say. So the upcoming opportunity for all of you from the provinces and territories is that the Coalition for Healthy School Food has asked Amberly and I to assist with the Global Child Nutrition Forum's global survey of school meal programs. So as we know, Canada is one of the few countries in the world that doesn't have a national program. So what would normally happen is that there would be a national data and the country would say, here, Global Child Nutrition Forum, use it. However, because we don't have that kind of situation, we have to do our best to cobble together as much data as we can. So expect to hear more from us either soon, very soon, and probably again again in the new year. So when we look at the data that we had from 2018, 2019, and the data from 2020, what do we see? Well, we look here at the mandates and the funders. So the primary mandate is something that is important to consider because it gives direction to the programs. Oestinger and al. in 2017 looked at the history of the evolution of school food programs internationally, and they said there were three phases. So the first was food security and hunger emphasis. The second was, as these programs evolved, then they expanded to think about, oh, it's not just calories, and I say that just kind of in quotation marks. We need to think about the quality of the food that these students are getting. And the third wave has been, the third phase of the evolution has been to think about comprehensive programs that really see food and school food programs as quite central to what the educational mandate of schools is and the opportunities that they can provide, including a strong emphasis on environmental sustainability. So back in 2018, 2019, and I should say too, in Canada, the 3 coexist, okay? So it hasn't been really an evolution. They're all coexisting. The primary emphasis was on food security and hunger and health, with minimal attention to environmental matters and some attention to education. You can see in 2020, and I think that reflects too with Kim's, the report card that she's presented, it had moved to food security and hunger, which given limited resources, given the speed, one can understand that it's like, okay, what is what we must do? But keep that in mind because we're going to come back to that at the end. You can see here too that I just wanted to highlight at the bottom that we only looked at provincial and territorial funders in our 2018-2019 research. And so therefore we can't compare these data exactly, because with the 2020, we did actually say, where are you getting your money? So we saw that they were getting their money from more places. That's why I have others under funders, because we know they were getting money, we just didn't ask. So what did they do? Well, back in 2018, 2019, schools that offered school food programs made them universally accessible. That means that if a student wanted to participate, they could. Not all schools offered programs. So in some provinces, we call it nested universality. So a school would be chosen for socioeconomic or other reasons, but primarily socioeconomic. And then within that school, every child could participate. But some schools were not receiving the funding from the provinces and territories. They might have programs, and if they did, they were funded by others. You can see, and universality is an important criteria because it aims to minimize stigma and students can feel comfortable participating and all of that. Once the students in 2020 were no longer in school, and again, it was the urgency and the acuteness of the issue, you can see that there were targeted programs. In other words, schools or community groups that knew of children that were in need said, we need to make sure those children are fed. And what often happened is that, again, when it was in the school, it was the school child who had the food. When it moved into 2020, it often included the families of those students. So it was a family access. Again, to Kim's earlier comments, there were nutrition criteria in 2018, 2019 for all provinces and territories. In 2020, there were some that reported that, yes, we're still following guidelines, and others, no. And the question arises, if we had a national school food program already, would that have been the case? Would we have been better prepared to do the pivoting? I will say that looking at other countries, their nutrition criteria also weakened, and they had national programs, so that occurred in and more targeting as well. So the targeting occurred in the UK. They did have to meet nutrition standards. Targeting occurred in Spain. In the US, targeting occurred, and they relaxed their nutrition standards. So it was challenging for everybody, regardless of what they were starting with. 2018, 2019, the primary program was breakfast. You can see here the creativity that was unleashed. It's like, breakfast is going to be challenging. There were also lunches and some snacks as well. Let's do food boxes, let's do that. Let's make it even simpler and give them gift cards to grocery stores that they can choose what they want. They can figure it out. We will provide them with the funding. So quite different models, and the food boxes and the gift cards were almost as popular as the breakfast programs. Lunches also quite popular, which doesn't happen so much pre-COVID. So again, the school was the place. When during COVID, it was either there were places that the families could pick up the food, or in other cases, the food was delivered. So you say that in the last line, 48 cents versus $3.40, like what's up with that? So please keep in mind that for the 2018-19, we were only looking at what the provinces and territories are funding. And in many instances, they are restricted in how much they can fund. So for example, in Ontario, they're only able to provide 15% of the total cost of a breakfast or meal, and that may be more than the food. So these are, I give you these as for interest, but they're really not comparable. Food boxes, this is I took this off the internet. This is a food box. It goes to the point of not always the nutrition as the primary goal here, although I think I do see some apples and some oranges here. In terms of our participants, and we didn't ask for any pictures, common items were fruit, and as well as eggs, milk, granola bars, pasta, rice, and potatoes. Some offered frozen meat and canned foods such as tomatoes and beans. How many people were being reached? Again, this is really tricky to try to provide, but I hope you understand that we did the best that we could here. So we have 1 million students, at least 1 million students, 5% to 83% in each province and territory. Kim has already mentioned that the 5% was Alberta, Yukon Territory, 83%. And the territories tend to be doing very well in terms of student reach. The Atlantic provinces, again, other than New Brunswick, also tend to be very strong. So it varies. Some of you are here from British Columbia, just so that you know, British Columbia, it's through their Community Link program, and they don't collect that program funds more than school food, and so they don't collect data at the provincial level that is specific to school food at this time. So that makes it impossible for us to compile the information. We don't know the way we asked the questions, and it just was too complicated to get at how many students we were reaching with our COVID survey. With the program reach, there's 15,500 schools in Canada. We've got 6,408 programs offered in 5,371 schools. So about 35% of schools, about 21% of students. And again, that's at least, because we know that we're underreporting. For the 277,000 food units, I added the breakfast, the food boxes, and what that was, that data was they reported on their previous week. So in the previous week, there were, out of those 136 participants, there were 277,000 units of food that were shared, and some of them would go to multiple people. So that is a very approximate number. We're going to pivot now, speaking of pivoting, to the national situation. But I don't know, who's on the call, but if you were involved somehow directly with school food or one of these programs, we'd love to hear from you. If you were, really want to thank you. These were difficult times, and a lot of children received food because of your work. And the photo on the left is actually from First Nations school before COVID. And again, just recognizing some of the terrific work that is happening in these schools in particular, where they're really embedding the school food experience into the fabric of the school and the fabric of the community. So a shout out to you who are involved in all of this work directly. So the patience that we've had. I show my grandchildren in some ways deliberately. It's like, okay, I could show my children. I've been working at this long enough. It's like, okay, when is this going to happen? But we seem to be getting closer, so we'll go with that. Back in 2019, the federal Liberals mentioned that they were going to work with provinces and territories. This was in their 2019 budget, to establish a national school food program. No funding was attached, and it just kind of sank like a stone. So in 2021, but we continue to work. In 2021, we now see in their platform not only saying that they're going to do it, and some money. So this is very exciting. As well, the NDP have stepped up to say they would, if they were elected, they would provide $1 billion over 4 years. And the Bloc Québécois has said that they would support transfer payments to provinces and territories. So we've had many challenges. Things are looking up. At the same time, too, we have the Food Policy for Canada was formed in 2019, and Dr. Catherine Ma from Dalhousie University is the chair of a new Canadian Food Policy Advisory Council working group on school nutrition. They conducted a survey this summer. I hope that some of you were able to participate in that, and we're hopeful that they will be making a positive contribution to this topic. As well, for the first time in any significant way, the federal government did step up and provide significant funds. They did not provide it through the provinces and territories, which was how they said they were going to fund school food and nutrition back in the 2019 budget. Instead, they worked through 5 national charities, including Breakfast Club of Canada. In total, through this food security emergency fund, they have given $300 million, so $100 million at 3 different times. Nutrition North Canada received funding as well. Indigenous communities were part of that. And there's a $50 million surplus food rescue program. So after years and years of the federal government saying, oh, this is a provincial, territorial, jurisdictional issue, they have stepped up. So that bodes well for us, I would say. And of course, many of you, and certainly Alberta Food Matters is a member of the Coalition for Healthy School Food that is now, Debbie Field has offered tremendous leadership. There's now over 180 organizational members and 40 endorsers from coast to coast to coast. and looking at building, establishing chapters within provinces and territories as well. So lots happening on that front. We often hear about what the coalition does at the federal level. As a longtime coalition member, certainly I see lots of benefits as well with the sharing through amongst the different groups. If you're not members yet, for example, there's been a very interesting webinar series looking at what other countries are doing around school food programs and advocacy at the provincial and territorial level. So lots to gain from working with the coalition. The coalition also has developed program principles for school food programs that are health promoting, universal, etc. And really trying to think about how, you know, what a national school food program can look like, especially since there's lots of activity and programs occurring already. So that brings us to what might happen, and this is a photo of a very comprehensive program. This is at Cambridge Narrow School in New Brunswick. It is pre-COVID, but these students were part of a culinary arts class. There was kale, stealth nutrition from a local farmer, as well as some other foods from a local farmer as part of those greens. And so, you know, that farm connection was there. The students were preparing the food. They were plating the food. They were serving it, and there was very little waste of this food. It was very impressive to see the skills and the enjoyment of the food that was available at that school. So what I am concerned about these days is, as I say, I definitely appreciate what people did under the pressures of COVID. My concern is that is the most recent conceptualization of how school food operates in this country. And so I think we all have a responsibility to say, yes, that was important to do. At the same time, we want to keep in mind that there are these other options and programs out there that are doing much more than simply providing food. And that's not to take away from what it is that they are doing. And so we have to remember, you know, the provinces and territories and other partners can help us get to that comprehensive, universal program and keep working towards that. So I will stop there. This is little Maya. Thank my co-authors, Suvadra and Rachel, who are from the University of Saskatchewan, Amberly, who's about to become Dr. Ritz very soon, about to defend her PhD, and Debbie Field from the Coalition for Healthy School Food. And there's my email address if you would like it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mary.